Hello there everybody, this is Myeth, and today I'm going to talk about the next expansion of the World of Warcraft. Now I know you've heard about The Dark Below, probably. If you haven't heard about it, Google it, you'll find out more. This is my prediction for what's going to be in the next expansion of the World of Warcraft. A lot of people telling me, oh, it's going to be like Burning Crusade, and we're going to have the Burning Legion, and there's going to be Demon Hunters. And let me just tell you, that's a lot of wishful thinking. If that were to happen, that would be the end of WoW. Sargeras, Burning Legion, that's end game of the whole game content. So that's not going to happen. Instead, I want to talk about what will most likely be in the next expansion, especially with a name like The Dark Below. Now, first of all, we're going to talk about foreshadowing. Now, this is a literary device, but it's also used in WoW a lot to let us know what's happening in the world and what might be coming next. WoW does this a lot. So, WoW is always foreshadowing the events and things to come in the next game with what is already in the current game. And if you know this, you can predict what will be in the next WoW expansion by following the threads and the strange things in the current game. So, first of all, what about the things that were in vanilla that were foreshadowing things that were in the Burning Crusade? Now, this is pretty simple. The Dark Portal is the most obvious example of this. The Dark Portal existed in vanilla, even though it remained inactive until the release of the Burning Crusade expansion, at which time it turned green, and you could walk through it. Secondly, Karazhan also existed in Deadwind Pass in vanilla, but was not an instance until the release of the Burning Crusade. So there's another example. An unused area named Quel'Thalas existed on the northern shores of the Eastern Kingdoms. If you swam around the northern part of the Eastern Kingdoms, eventually would reach a place called Quel'Thalas. But there was nothing there. There was some ruins, and the name of the zone changed, but the land of the Blood Elves was not accessible until Burning Crusade also. So those are three examples of things in vanilla that kind of foreshadowed what would be in the Burning Crusade. So now, what happened in the Burning Crusade to foreshadow what was in Wrath of the Lich King? Funny you ask. Basically, the idea that the planet of Draenor, or Outland, where the Burning Crusade expansion takes place, is also the homeworld of the Orc war chief Ner'zhul, who would later become known as the Lich King. Yes, that is what the Lich King looked like before, he merged with Arthas and all kinds of other things happened. Also, Terran Gorfine, the first Death Knight, possesses you in a Shadowmoon Valley quest, and you gain his Death Knight abilities, kind of foreshadowing the Death Knight class, in a way. Those are just two examples of things that happened in the Burning Crusade that foreshadowed Wrath of the Lich King. So, what happened in Wrath of the Lich King to foreshadow what happened in Cataclysm? Well, you have the Twilight's Hammer. They feature in a number of places in Northrend, such as the Old Kingdom, Ulduar, and also in the Ruby Sanctum. So, after that, there are also many shape-shifting Worgen in the Grizzly Hills that shapeshift from human to Worgen form. And they're also trying to resurrect the Shade of Aragal, or maybe he's just shown up there, but that is one thing in Wrath of the Lich King that is highly overlooked that foreshadows the Worgen in Cataclysm. Another thing that I saw in Cataclysm that sort of foreshadowed what was going to happen is a holographic globe of Azeroth in the Halls of Lightning bursts into flames when you kill the main boss of the dungeon, Loken. Now, actually, that's supposed to signify the signal that would go out to basically purge the whole world, and you have to go to Algalon to stop it. But it does sort of foreshadow what happens to the world. The fire and burning of Deathwing, obviously. The last thing that happened was sort of a leak in the game files. A very detailed mask of Worgen and Goblins were added to the game files for the Halloween events, which led people to believe that they would be playable characters in the next expansion. And that basically did actually happen. So that was one thing that people were like, maybe this will be in the next expansion, and it was. Also, they did add ogres and Naga and Vykrul to those masks, which is kind of weird, but anyway. So what happened in Cataclysm that foreshadowed what would be in Mists of Pandaria? Mists of Pandaria came kind of out of nowhere, but there are a few little things that kind of foreshadow what happened in the Mists of Pandaria expansion. For example, there are Chinese food boxes strewn about in most new goblin areas in the game, like Kazan and the port town Ashara. And they have the Cloud Serpent Dragon on them, too. I thought that was kind of interesting. As for pet battles, there was always a constant battle going on between different pets. Near Thunder Bluff in Mulgore, they were actually, quote-unquote, battling. And then what happens in Mists of Pandaria? We get pet battles. Foreshadowing? Perhaps. Now, another thing that happened in Cataclysm to kind of foreshadow what would happen in Mists of Pandaria is Garrosh was made War Chief of the Horde, which at some point Thrall also kind of doubted it. He said, he didn't think it was such a great idea. I think in the quests where you kind of go to his different elemental selves and all the different elemental realms and try to put them back together, he kind of has doubts about Garrosh Hellscream as the War Chief. Now, as for what's after Mists of Pandaria, we don't know. Some people say that it's going to be the Dark Below, and that might be the case. But if it is the case, then we have to look at it from a perspective of maybe it will deal with the Maelstrom and Azjara and underwater, or at least the South Seas. So what happens in Mists of Pandaria that kind of foreshadows that kind of an expansion? Let's look at that. First of all, we see a lot more people representing Kultiris as main points in the story, especially Jaina Proudmoore. She kind of has a little bit more of an edge to her. Her hair has gone white. She's in the 5.1 quests, running around, trying to exterminate all of the Blood Elf faction in Dalaran. Let's see. Also, another character that's in the beginning, the opening animations for the Alliance quests that lead you into Pandaria is Grand Admiral Jess Tereth. And she's actually wearing a Kultiris tabard, or Theramore tabard, if you will, which actually, Theramore was actually an extension of Kultiris. And that's where Jaina Proudmoore is actually from. So, Kultiris is a little bit more represented in Mists of Pandaria, albeit not blatantly. In a place called Soggy's Gamble in the Dread Waste, there's a statue to the goddess of the sea, Mazu. Now, if you notice, that statue looks like a night elf, or a high elf, if you will, and it's made out of jade. You can ask the guy standing next to it about that statue, and he'll tell you a little bit about it. But I think that's kind of a reference to Azjara, in a way, because she's not necessarily a goddess of the sea, but she does look kind of like a night elf when we first meet her back in Cataclysm. Anyway, another thing I want to point out is there's a lot of pirate-themed items and things in the game now. For example, Mr. Smite's compass is a throwback to the pirates of the Defias, especially with that pirate ship. There's a pirate hat and a rapier in the battle on the high seas, and oranges for scurvy. So that's another thing. They did say that they wanted to put, naval battles in the game. And even though those ships are stationary in that particular scenario, I wouldn't rule out there being, like, boats just attacking each other and moving around in the future. I mean, we have vehicles in the game, so you never know. Another thing that is in 5.4 that's coming up there's a lot of ghost pirates on the Timeless Isle, just ghost pirates everywhere, hidden, and they'll occasionally show up in certain areas. Not to mention that there's South Sea pirates on the Timeless Isle, which is another pirate faction. So there's a lot of pirates suddenly showing up in the game and on the Timeless Isle. So another thing I want to point out is that Zandalar is in the South Seas, and we're going to a quick glimpse of the happenings on the troll capital of Zandalar in this Lord Walker Cho vision that he shows us. And that's north of Pandaria. They were trying to get to Pandaria to, get buddy-buddy with the Thunder King. So, we also get to see what King Rusticon looks like, and that's the Dark Prophet Zul standing in front of him, trying to warn him about what's coming. So, that's a thing. Another thing about the Dark Below is that the Heart of Yasharj whispers to you during the Garrosh encounter that you will rest in a place called Nyalotha. This is underwater, and it is where N'Zoth lies in the depths of the ocean. He says to you, you will rest in Nyalotha. See, now that is a very interesting thing. That's kind of a spoiler. I mean, that the Heart of Yasharj will whisper to you, but what it says is not anything new, because the puzzle box of Yogg-Saron also mentions a place called Nyalotha, and that's underwater. So when we talk about, the dark below, that might be what it's referring to. Or it could be a Diablo 3 expansion. Nobody knows. But anyway, there are also many elements of Mist of Pandaria that might be foreshadowing the next expansion, or at least are to some degree wishful thinking. For example, if you wait around long enough in the Heartlands, in the Valley of the Four Winds, you can find a guy who will give you an ancient Pandaren woodcutter. Now the funny thing about this is that it says etched into the blade you see something that has all but faded, plus 15 wood crafting. There is no wood crafting in the game, but could there be in the future? Is it a clue? And if we have wood crafting, would it be that far-fetched to have boat building as another profession? So, it says a book describing the intricacies of building a fine watercraft. You wouldn't understand. But think about this. They've been working on the technology and giving a lot more characters the ability to either walk on water or have a mount that will go on water. So, is a boat mount too far-fetched of an idea? There's one in the Thousand Needles, or Thousand Islands as it is now. So, we could have boats as mounts in the next expansion. That would be interesting, especially if it was a water or sea-based expansion. Of course, there are those who would try to influence the politics of the two factions with threats of impending doom. I hear a lot of people saying, well, Wrathion said he showed us these things that were happening, and yeah. When was the last time that you trusted a Black Dragon? Let's see, Lady Katrana Prestor? She was, very trustworthy. She didn't try to kill us and turn into a Nixia. Or, Victor, Lord Victor Nefarian, or Nefarious, who was actually Nefarian and was basically manipulating Rend Blackhand. So, just saying that we can't really trust what Wrathion tells us. I mean, eventually, yes, the Burning Legion are going to come back to our planet. But, I don't think it's in the next expansion. Anyway, lastly, the only reason that Pandaria was hidden in the mist for 10,000 years was because of the Sundering. Now, if Azshara is the main boss of the next expansion, the Sundering becomes very important. I mean, she was basically responsible for the rise of magic, the fall of her own empire, and when her empire fell, she made a deal with the old gods, and all of her people were turned into Naga. So there's a connection between this story of Pandaria and how it was hidden in the mist, and what broke the world apart back in the time of the Sundering. So, what am I gonna talk about in the next video? I'm gonna talk about what's missing in the World of Warcraft. What haven't we seen? What villains and races have we yet to meet? And what hasn't been explored yet on Azeroth? So, thanks for watching. If you can think of any more examples of foreshadowing like this in WoW, especially ones that go more than one expansion apart, please leave them in the comments below, and I will talk to you in the next video, and we will talk about what kind of things are missing in the World of Warcraft and what might be in the next expansion.